So now that we saw how the shorthand method works, let's update our wrapper and remove out the left and the right, and we're going to set it to the left and the right would have 0 or auto, and the top and the bottom would have 0. And this is how we can set up our wrapper in our web page in order to display it accordingly. So now when I refresh it, so now I've got my centered page just as I wanted. I'm going to close this one down, and I've got my page centered just as needed, and it works the same way as left and right. So in the previous lesson we looked at margin, so we can also do padding, and this is on the inside of the border. We've got several options just as we did with margins. We've got bottom, left, right, and top, and the shorthand is going to work exactly the same way, where if we've got a set of values like this, we can add them all in and have them show up within our web page here. So now whenever I look at this particular element now I'm going to select it again within that Chrome DevTools, we see that we've got our margins here of 100, 50, 0, and 200. We've got our border, which is 100 all the way around, and then we've got our padding, so 150, 0, and 200. And the padding is on the inside. And notice as well that it's also moving that text in, because that text and the images and all that content is sitting on this inner part of the box model. So it's sitting inside of the padding. So the padding is actually outside of it. So essentially there's 4 different layers here within the box model. There's the margin, which is on the outside of the entire element, the border, which sits on the border of the element and creates that border, so we could set different border values as well. And we've got padding here, so the padding sits on the inside of the border but still on the outside of the content. And then finally we come to the content, so whatever values we've set here, the content is going to abide by what's available for it. So typically whenever we've got 2 content sections, especially when we've got a border around like this, we don't want our text sitting right up next to that, and this is where we would use the padding and the margins in order to accommodate that. So typically I don't want my text sitting right next to it, so let's open up our sidebar and add in a little bit of padding there for the text. Now if we refresh it, so it gives that text a little bit a better feel there, and also for the main content section we might want to do the same thing where we add in some padding around there. And also keeping in mind that we want to make sure that we're not using up too much space, because then we're going to bump our available allocated space, so we don't want to run out of that as well. And so now it's a much neater way to present our content on our web page. So I'm going to open up this display so we can see the live display as well. And now I can get rid of some of this border around there. So typically I wouldn't have a border here. I probably wouldn't, I can maybe keep this temp in here. Might come in useful a little bit later on. So it doesn't look that bad, so maybe I'll leave that in there and remove out the border that's around it. Save that, refresh, and now we can see what our web page is going to look like. So we've got our side area here, we've got a border around it, and we've added in some padding around the text. In the next lesson, we're going to look at moving down from the wrapper. So the wrapper was our main container here, and we don't have anything next to the wrapper, so any siblings to the wrapper. So now we're going to move into this section with is our head section. We've also got our navigation bar in there. So that's coming up in the next lesson, and we're going to actually style this and make it look like a navigation bar. So that's coming up.